Troops from the US 82nd Airborne Division on the march in the forests of Arlamov in Poland's Carpathian Mountains. The contingent is part of a wider deployment of 5,000 US troops sent to Poland in recent weeks. That's in addition to the 4,000 American soldiers already in the country. NATO is sending a message that they will defend every inch of alliance territory.
The Ukrainian border is just a few hundred meters down this track. And as thousands of American troops conduct exercises in these Polish forests, Russia has been conducting airstrikes on Ukrainian targets just over the frontier.
There are growing fears of an accidental engagement between the US and Russia. A hotline has been set up to avoid that scenario. But there are also fears that NATO troops in Eastern Europe could be targeted in the event of escalation. Russia's President Vladimir Putin last month raised the alert level of his nuclear forces in response to what he described as NATO's aggressive statements.
NATO still is saying that it will not intervene on Ukrainian territory, but increasingly Western weapons are flowing into Ukraine through NATO member states. And it is possible that Putin will, or in fact already sees, such military support, which it has to be said on our side is not particularly controlled or accompanied by careful messaging, as NATO joining the fight. In other words, the discussion to some degree is now about whether Putin would be willing to use tactical nuclear weapons against NATO forces on NATO territory. That would be a new world.
The alliance must not let Putin get away with nuclear blackmail, says Fabrice Potier, a former head of policy planning at NATO.
What will stop Putin from doing the same next time, possibly including against a NATO ally?
NATO has repeatedly said it will not get directly involved in the conflict. Potier says the alliance should do more.
Are we fully aware of the danger of not doing anything? If I look at that recent history, actually the risk of standing on the sideline and clamoring that we are covering the NATO allies back, but our mission stops at the NATO border, that I think risk is no longer acceptable.
Ukraine's border with Poland has become the major gateway for refugees fleeing the conflict. But it is also becoming a key strategic frontier, a conduit for NATO weapons heading into Ukraine and a potential future flashpoint.
For decades, Ukraine has acted as an effective buffer zone between NATO and Russia. But if the Kremlin's forces seize all of Ukraine, there is little to separate NATO troops and Russian soldiers. There is no border fence here, just mountains and forests. Henry Ridgwell for VOA News, Arlamov on the Polish-Ukraine border.